3 days had passed since the sky turned white and killed everything below it. Shareth glided through smoke that still rose from the dead forests, her metallic wings catching the dim light that filtered through ash clouds. She had seen worlds die before. In 3,000 years of life, she had witnessed stars explode, planets freeze, and entire species vanish in a time. But this was different somehow. This world had been alive with voices just days ago. The colony settlement below looked like a child's toys melted in a fire. Metal structures had pooled into silver puddles. Glass towers had become strange sculptures of frozen liquid. The streets were rivers of black where plants once grew. Nothing moved down there. Nothing made sound. Shareth circled lower, following the scanning pattern her people had assigned. The DRA Val observed. They recorded. They documented the end of things. That was their purpose across millions of years. They never interfered. The universe followed its own rules, and younger species either survived or they did not. Her companion, Calvar, flew beside her in silence. He was older by 5 centuries and believed firmly in their ancient ways. He had watched 100 worlds burn and never questioned their role as witnesses. The solar flare had been massive beyond prediction. The star these humans orbited had released energy equivalent to 1,000,000 fusion bombs in one terrible pulse. Every protective shield failed. Every system melted. The 50,000 humans living on Virtus had perhaps 30 seconds of warning before the radiation cooked the atmosphere itself. Shareth knew humans were young as civilizations went. Only 400 years in space. Barely a moment compared to her own people's history. They built quickly and spread fast. These humans, filling worlds with their noise and their constant activity. The DRA Val had been watching them with mild interest, wondering if they would last even 1,000 years. Now Virtus held its answer. She was about to turn back toward the observation vessel when she heard it. A sound so small it should have been impossible to detect from her altitude. But DRA Val hearing was sharp beyond human understanding. It was a cry. A child's cry. Shareth dropped altitude rapidly, her wings tucking close. Calvar called after her in their ancient language, his voice confused and concerned. She ignored him. The sound came from a cluster of ruins near what maps showed as a residential sector. There, an emergency shelter, half collapsed but still partially standing. The humans had built these throughout their colony, small reinforced bunkers meant to protect families during storms or equipment failures. This one had somehow survived the initial blast, though its walls were cracked and scorched. Shareth landed carefully, her massive form sending dust clouds rolling across the dead ground. She was 60 meters from wingtip to wingtip, large even for her species. The shelter entrance was barely big enough for a human adult to crawl through. The crying stopped. Shareth waited. Then it came again, weaker this time. A small voice calling for someone who would never answer. She could smell the child inside. Human scent mixed with fear and dehydration, alive against all probability. The shelter's systems must have held just long enough, provided just enough protection from the radiation. A statistical impossibility. But here it was. Calvar landed behind her with a heavy thump. His voice was sharp. We do not interfere. This is fundamental law. Shareth, you know this better than most. There is a living child in there, she replied, not turning to face him. There were 50,000 living humans here 3 days ago. We observed their end. We documented it. Now we return with our data. This is our way. Our way, Shareth said slowly, is 4 million years old. Perhaps it is time to question it. You speak heresy. I speak from having seen too much death. She moved closer to the shelter entrance. How many worlds have we watched die, Calvar? How many last survivors have we cataloged and left behind? The universe is not ours to change. We are observers. Our role is sacred. Shareth began carefully tearing away debris from the shelter entrance. Her claws, each as long as a human forearm, moved with surprising delicacy. I had offspring once. 800 years ago, a cosmic ray burst destroyed them while they were still in the egg. I could have moved them. I could have protected them. But I followed our laws. I observed. I documented. And they died. That is tragic, but it does not change our purpose. Perhaps it should change something. The entrance was clear now. Shareth could see inside the darkened shelter. A small figure huddled in the corner, eyes wide with terror and confusion. A human female child, perhaps 4 years old, dressed in torn clothing. Her face was dirty with ash, her lips cracked from thirst. The child stared at the massive dragon blocking the light. She should have screamed. Any rational creature would have fled from something so large and alien. Instead, the girl just looked at Shareth with exhausted eyes. "Your parents?" Shareth asked gently in the human language. She had studied their communications for decades. The child did not answer. She was too young to fully understand the question, or perhaps too traumatized to speak. She just kept staring that Calvar's voice was cold behind her. "You cannot take that child. You know what the council will say. Exile. You will be declared non-existent to our people. Is one young creature worth that cost?" Shareth thought of her own offspring, dead for centuries. She thought of the millions of years her people had spent watching and recording and never acting. She thought of this small being who had survived impossible odds only to die alone in the ruins of her world. She made her decision that Shareth reached carefully into the shelter. The child flinched but did not pull away. The dragon's claw, so large it could crush stone, touched the girl with impossible gentleness. Then Shareth wrapped her wing around the trembling child, pulling her close to the warmth of her body. The girl was cold despite the heat of the ash around them. She was shaking, but as Shareth's wing covered her, blocking out the dead world and the smoke and the terrible emptiness, the child's hand reached up and touched the dragon's scales. "Warm," the child whispered. Behind them, Calvar said nothing, but his silence spoke clearly of disapproval and worry for what his friend had just chosen. Shareth did not look back. She lifted into the air carefully, the child protected against her chest, and flew toward the mountains where caves would offer shelter. For the first time in 3,000 years, she had broken the sacred law of her people. She had interfered, and somehow, holding this fragile human life against her ancient body, she could not bring herself to regret it. The cave smelled of stone and old water. Shareth had chosen this place carefully, deep enough to hide from scanning equipment, but close enough to the surface for air to flow freely. The child slept against her foreleg, finally exhausted from crying. The dragon had given her water from her own supplies, carefully modified to be safe for human biology. It was not ideal, but it would keep the girl alive that Shareth watched the child breathe. Such tiny lungs, such fragile bones. Humans were so breakable compared to her own kind. The DRA valve could survive in vacuum for short periods, withstand temperatures that would melt steel, live for thousands of years. This small creature would die from a simple fall or a few days without water. How did such fragile beings ever make it to space? The child stirred and opened her eyes. They were brown, darker than the ash that covered the dead world outside. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across the vast distance between their species. "Mama," the child said quietly. The word pierced something in Shareth that she thought had died centuries ago. "No, little one, I'm not your mother. Where's Mama? How did you explain death to something so young? How did you tell a child that everyone she knew was gone, that the bright burning sky had taken them all away?" Shareth had observed death countless times, but had never needed to explain it to a survivor. "Your mother loved you very much," Shareth said carefully. "She made sure you were safe in that shelter. But she cannot come back now." The child seemed to understand in the way young creatures do, not with logic, but with instinct. Her eyes filled with water that ran down her dirty cheeks. She did not wail or scream. She just cried silently. Her small shoulders shaking, Shareth wrapped her wing around the girl again, providing warmth and darkness and something solid to hold on to. They stayed that way for a long time. Eventually, the child spoke again. "I am Amy." "Amy," Shareth repeated, learning the shape of the human name. "I am called Shareth." "Shareth." Amy tried the sounds carefully. "You are big." "Yes." "Are you a dragon?" "I saw dragons in my books." Something like that. Amy was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are you going to eat me?" "No, child. I do not eat humans." "Oh, good." Amy seemed satisfied with this answer. Her capacity to accept her situation was remarkable. Perhaps human young were more adaptable than Shareth had known. Or perhaps this child was simply in shock. The sound of wings echoed from outside the cave. Heavy, powerful wings. Kalvar had found them. The older dragon entered the cave mouth, barely fitting through the opening. His scales were darker than Shareth's, deep blue-black like the space between stars. His eyes held the weight of 3,500 years of existence. "You have made your choice then," Kalvar said in their language. Amy could not understand the words, but she pressed closer to Shareth anyway, sensing tension. "I have," Shareth replied. "The council will hear of this within days. I must report what I have witnessed." "I know. I'm not asking you to lie for me." Kalvar moved closer, his massive head lowering to look at Amy. The child stared back with surprising courage. "She is so small, so temporary. In 60 years, perhaps 70, if she is lucky, she will be dust. You will still be young, still have thousands of years ahead of you, and you will spend them exiled, cast out from our people, for this brief moment of compassion." "Yes." "Why, Shareth? Help me understand. We have watched entire civilizations fall, seen species go extinct. Why does this one small creature matter so much?" Shareth was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her answer. "Do you remember the Kelfrin? We observed them for 2,000 years. We watched their art develop, their philosophy evolve, their cities grow. And when their sun entered its death phase, we documented every moment of their ending. We recorded their final messages, their last acts of love and defiance. And then they were gone. I remember. Their culture was fascinating. We learned everything about them except the one thing that mattered most. We never knew them. We never spoke to them. We never let them know they were not alone in their final days. We were ghosts to them, silent witnesses to their death." Shareth looked down at Amy. "I do not want to be a ghost anymore. Our laws exist for a reason. If we interfere, we change the course of natural development. We corrupt what should unfold on its own. Or perhaps we are part of what should unfold." Shareth felt her conviction growing stronger as she spoke. Perhaps the universe is not meant to be observed in silence. Perhaps connection itself is part of the natural order. That is a dangerous philosophy, more dangerous than watching everything die while doing nothing. Kalvar sighed, a sound like wind through canyon walls. "You know, I must report this. The council will declare you exiled. You will be non-existent to our people. No DRA Val will speak to you. No ship will carry you. You will be alone except for this child who will live only a fraction of your lifespan. I understand. Do you? Truly." Kalvar's voice softened slightly. "We have been friends for 1,000 years, Shareth. I do not want to lose you to this. You are not losing me. The council's laws are losing me. There is a difference." Amy tugged on Shareth's scale gently. "Why is he angry?" "He is not angry, little one. He is worried." "Worried about what?" "About what happens when someone breaks very old rules." Amy thought about this with the seriousness that small children sometimes show. Then she looked up at Kalvar with her dirt-smudged face and said, "Thank you for worrying about Shareth. She is nice. She gave me water." Kalvar stared at the child. Something shifted in his ancient eyes, though Shareth could not quite read what it meant. "You have 3 days," Kalvar finally said. "The council gave me that much time to complete our survey. If you return with me and leave the human child for her own people's rescue teams, they may show mercy. They may reduce your exile to a century or 2. But if you are still here with her when I leave, the exile will be permanent and absolute." "I understand," Shareth said quietly. Kalvar turned to leave, his massive form barely clearing the cave opening. Then he stopped and looked back. "For what is worth, old friend, I hope you find whatever it is you are seeking, even if I cannot follow where you are going." Then he was gone, his wing beats fading into the ashen sky outside. Amy looked up at Shareth with worried eyes. "Are you in trouble because of me?" Shareth wrapped her wing more tightly around child. "No, Ami. I am exactly where I choose to be." The child seemed to accept this. She settled against Shareth's warmth, her tiny hand resting on the dragon's scales. Within moments, she was asleep again, Her breathing soft and regular, Shareth looked toward the cave entrance where smoke still drifted past. 3 days until she was cast out forever from her own people. 3 days until she became truly alone in a universe that suddenly felt much larger and more uncertain. But as Amy's small hand twitched in sleep against her scales, Shareth found that she was not afraid. 5 days after the solar flare turned Virtus into a graveyard, human ships finally arrived. Shareth watched them from a distance, her superior vision tracking 3 rescue vessels as they entered orbit. They moved with purpose and speed, spreading out across the dead planet in systematic search patterns. These humans were looking for their own. Amy sat near the cave entrance, drawing pictures in the dust with a stick. She had adapted to her situation with remarkable flexibility, though nightmares still woke her several times each night. Shareth would wrap her wing around the child during those dark moments, and Amy would eventually sleep again. "Are those the rescue ships?" Amy asked without looking up from her drawing. "Yes. Your people have come searching for survivors. Will they find any?" Shareth had been monitoring radio frequencies. She had heard the rescue teams discovering bodies, heard their voices crack with emotion, heard them mark locations and move on to search more ruins. Perhaps. Sometimes life finds ways to persist. Like me, like you. Amy went back to her drawing. It showed a large winged creature and a small human figure. Between them, she had drawn what might have been a sun or what might have been a flower. Children's art was difficult to interpret, but the meaning seemed clear enough that a new sound reached Shareth's ears. Footsteps. Human footsteps, multiple sets, moving through the rocky terrain below their cave. A search team had followed some signal or some systematic grid pattern that led them into the mountains. "Amy," Shareth said quietly, "your people are very close now." The child looked up. Her expression was complicated, showing both hope and fear. "Will you go away if they find me?" The question cut deeper than Shareth expected. Would she? Should she? The logical choice was to let the humans take their young and return to her life, even if that life now meant exile. But the thought of Amy's face when the dragon left her made Shareth's chest hurt in ways she did not fully understand. "I do not know what will happen," Shareth admitted. "I do not want you to go away." Amy's voice was very small. "I do not want to leave you either." The footsteps grew louder. Voices called out in human language, searching for any signs of life. Shareth made a decision. She moved deeper into the cave system, gesturing for Amy to follow. The child obeyed without question, trusting the dragon completely. They went down through narrow passages where Shareth had to squeeze her bulk carefully. The caves went deeper than she had explored before, down into cool darkness where ancient water had carved stone into strange shapes. Amy held onto one of Shareth's claws as they moved, fearless of the dark as long as the dragon was near. But Amy had developed a cough over the past day. The dust and ash she had breathed in the shelter was causing problems in her small lungs. Now, in the quiet darkness of the deep caves, that cough echoed loudly. The human voices changed direction immediately. They had heard as Shareth and Amy emerged into a larger cavern lit by phosphorescent fungi. Beautiful, but it was a dead end. The footsteps behind them quickened. Amy coughed again. Unable to stop herself, 3 humans entered the cavern behind them. They wore protective suits and carried equipment that beeped and glowed. Their lights stabbed through the darkness, landing on Shareth's massive form. Then on Amy, standing beside the dragon's foreleg. The humans froze. One of them, a woman with dark skin visible through her helmet's faceplate, raised her hand slowly. Her voice came through suit speakers, surprisingly calm despite what she must be feeling. "Please do not harm the child." Shareth understood the assumption. These humans saw a massive alien creature in a cave with one of their young. Of course they thought Amy was in danger. "I mean her no harm. I have been protecting her." The humans all took a step back. The woman who had spoken recovered fastest. "You speak our language. Your broadcasts are not difficult to decode. I have been studying human communication for many years." Another human, a man with nervous hands on some kind of weapon, spoke sharply. "Step away from the child. Let her come to us." Amy moved, but not in the direction the man expected. She stepped in front of Shareth, spreading her small arms wide in a protective gesture that would have been comical if it were not so genuine. No, she is nice. She gave me water and kept me warm. Do not hurt her. The three humans looked at each other in obvious confusion. The woman knelt down slowly, making herself smaller and less threatening. Sweetheart, I am Commander Patricia Lewis. We came here to find survivors, to help people. Are you hurt? Are you okay? I am okay. Shareth took care of me. Shareth? Is that the dragon? She is not a dragon. She is Dra Val. Amy pronounced the alien word carefully, the way Shareth had taught her. Patricia looked up at Shareth with calculating eyes. She was clearly intelligent and adapting quickly to an impossible situation. How long have you had the child? 5 days. Since shortly after the flare event. I found her in an emergency shelter, alone and dehydrated. And you kept her alive? Yes. What? It was a fair question. Shareth considered her answer carefully. Because leaving her die felt wrong in ways I could not accept. The man with the weapon spoke again, his voice tight. Commander, we need to secure the child and report this contact. This is a first contact situation. We're not trained for this. Patricia ignored him, still focused on Shareth. What do you want? Are you holding her for something? Trade? Information? I want nothing except her safety. Then let her come with us. We have medical facilities. Food she can actually digest. Other survivors she can be with. Other children. Amy's hand tightened on Shareth's claw. The dragon felt the child, trembling slightly. Amy, Shareth said gently. These humans can care for you better than I can. They are your people. But you are mine too, Amy said, tears starting in her eyes. You saved me. I do not want only human people. I want you too. Patricia's expression softened. She looked at Amy, then at Shareth, then back at Amy. Something seemed to settle in her mind. She stood up slowly and took off her helmet, breathing the cave air directly. It was a gesture of trust, making herself vulnerable. What if, Patricia said carefully, she did not have to choose? What if you came with us? Back to our ship. We can figure this out together. The man with the weapon made a sound of protest. Commander, that is not protocol. We cannot just invite an alien onto our rescue vessel. Lieutenant, that alien kept a human child alive for 5 days on a dead world. I think we can manage having her on our ship. Patricia's voice had steel in it. She looked back at Shareth. Will you come? Will you let us help Amy together? Shareth thought of Calvar's warning. Thought of the exile she had already accepted. Thought of Amy's small hand on her scales and the child's trust that had somehow become the most important thing in her long life. How will I fit on your vessel? Shareth asked. Patricia smiled slightly. We will figure something out. We are humans. Improvising is what we do best. Amy looked up at Shareth with hopeful eyes. Please? Come with me. And there, in a deep cave on a dead world, surrounded by humans she had only just met, Shareth made her second choice in defiance of everything she had been taught. Yes, I will come. The relief on Amy's face was worth any amount of exile. The child hugged Shareth's leg as tightly as her small arms could manage. Patricia spoke into her communication device, her words rapid and professional, already solving the impossible logistics of bringing a 60-meter dragon onto a human rescue ship. The third human, a man with kind eyes who had stayed silent until now, finally spoke. I am Dr. Okonkwo. I should probably examine Amy. Make sure she is healthy. She has a cough, Shareth said, from the ash and dust, and she needs better nutrition than I could provide. We can handle that. The doctor knelt beside Amy. Hello there, brave girl. Can I check to make sure you are feeling okay? Amy looked to Shareth for permission. The dragon nodded. Only then did the child allow the doctor to begin his examination. Patricia watched this exchange with thoughtful eyes. When she caught Shareth's gaze, she said quietly, You really do care about her, do not you? More than I expected to care about anything ever again, Shareth admitted. Then I'm glad we found you both. Patricia smiled. This is going to be a very interesting report to file. Together, the strange group made their way back through the caves and into the ash-filtered daylight of Virtus. moving toward a future that none of them could have predicted even a week before. The cargo bay of a human rescue ship was never designed to hold a DRA valve. Shareth barely fit, her wings folded tightly against her body, her neck curved to avoid hitting the ceiling. The humans had cleared everything out and brought in environmental controls, but it was still deeply uncomfortable. She did not complain. Amy needed proper medical care, and Shareth would endure any amount of cramped quarters to ensure the child received it. Amy refused to leave the cargo bay. Dr. Okonkwo had examined her thoroughly and declared her surprisingly healthy, all things considered. The cough would clear with proper medication. Her dehydration was already improving, but the child would not go to the sleeping quarters assigned to survivors. She insisted on staying with Shareth, sleeping curled against the dragon's side, just as she had in the cave. Patricia allowed it. The commander seemed to understand that separating them now would cause more harm than good. Other survivors have been brought aboard. 17 humans total have been found alive, scattered across Virtus in various emergency shelters and reinforced basements. Most were adults, but there were 3 other children. One was a teenage boy named David who had lost his entire family. 2 were sisters, aged 7 and 9, who had survived together in their school shelter. The first time the other survivors saw Shareth, they reacted with fear. Understandable. The dragon was massive and alien and completely outside their experience. But Amy changed that. The little girl stood in front of groups of frightened humans and explained very seriously that Shareth was nice and had saved her and they should not be scared. Children believed Amy more readily than adults did. David was the first to approach, curiosity overcoming caution. "Are you really a dragon?" he asked. "I am Draval," Shareth explained it. "Your myths about dragons may have come from species similar to mine, encountered by your ancestors long ago. Can you breathe fire?" "Yes, though I would not do so on this ship. The results would be unfortunate for everyone." David actually smiled at that. It was the first time he had smiled since being rescued. He came back the next day with the 2 sisters, who were too shy to speak but stared at Shareth with wide eyes. Amy took them by their hands and introduced them formally. "This is Shareth. She is my friend. She can be your friend too if you're nice." The sisters, whose names were Claire and Ruth, nodded solemnly. Claire, the younger one, asked in a whisper, "Does she tell stories?" "She knows very old stories," Amy said proudly, "from before humans were even in space." "Will she tell us one?" Shareth looked at these damaged young humans, refugees from a disaster that had stolen their families and their homes. She thought about her own people's belief in non-interference, in observation without connection. Then she began to speak. "Long ago, when your species still lived on only one world, there was a planet called Nades. It was home to a people who built towers of crystal that sang in the wind. They were beautiful and peaceful, and they believed their sun would shine forever. But stars do not last forever. Their sun grew old and swelled, and the heat began to destroy their world." The children listened with complete attention. Even some of the adults had drifted closer to hear. The Nades people had a choice. They could try to flee to other worlds, but their technology was not advanced enough. They would save only a few, or they could stay and face the end together. They chose to stay. In their final days, they did not panic or fight. Instead, they gathered in their crystal towers and sang. Their songs were about the beauty they had seen, the lives they had lived, the love they had shared. And when the sun finally consumed their world, they were singing. Ruth, the older sister, asked quietly, "Did anyone remember them?" "Yes. My people recorded their songs. We carry their memory across time. They are gone, but they are not forgotten. As long as we remember them, they remain part of the universe." Claire's crying softly. David looked away, blinking hard. Amy squeezed Shareth's claw. These children understood. They had lost everything, but they were not gone. They would be remembered. Patricia found Shareth later that night, after the children had finally gone to sleep. Amy was curled against the dragon's side, wrapped in a blanket the crew had provided. "Thank you," Patricia said quietly, "for the story, for everything you're doing for them. I'm doing very little. Simply existing near them seems to provide comfort." You are providing more than you know. That boy, David, has not spoken more than a few words since we found him. Today he laughed. Those sisters have not been more than 3 feet apart since we rescued them. Today they separated long enough to explore the ship because they knew you would be here when they got back. Patricia sat on a storage crate, looking tired. You are giving them stability in a situation where everything stable has been destroyed. I understand what it is to lose everything, Shareth said quietly. The eggs you mentioned to your friend. I overheard some of it when we found you. Yes, 800 years ago. I hatched them myself, as my species does. Kept them warm through the incubation period. Then a cosmic event, random and unpredictable, released radiation that killed them before they could emerge. I followed all the rules. I observed the tragedy. I recorded it properly. And then I spent 8 centuries wondering if rules mattered more than the life I could have saved by simply moving them somewhere safer. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I lost someone too. My partner was stationed on Virtus. We were supposed to retire together next year. Travel to the old systems, see Earth, visit the places where humanity began. She smiled sadly. Now, I am filing reports about first contact protocols and trying to figure out how to explain to headquarters that I invited an alien onto my ship. Are you in trouble for that decision? Probably, but I would make the same choice again. She looked at Amy, sleeping peacefully. That child needed you. Honestly, all these survivors need you, even if they do not realize it yet. You are a constant, something that does not break or change or die like everything else in their lives just did. A communication device on Patricia's belt beeped. She listened to a brief message, then stood. We will reach Terra Nova in 3 weeks. That is a major colony world. Full medical facilities, trauma counselors, housing for refugees. Also a lot of bureaucrats who are going to have very strong opinions about you. I am accustomed to being judged by councils and leaders. These are human bureaucrats. They are a special kind of challenge. Patricia smiled. But we will figure it out. Somehow, over the following days, something unexpected developed. The human survivors, especially the children, began spending more time in the cargo bay. They brought games and books, drew pictures to show Shareth, asked endless questions about space and aliens and what other worlds looked like. The dragon answered patiently, finding herself enjoying these interactions more than she would have predicted. The humans brought their own stories too. David talked about his family, his voice cracking but determined to remember them. Claire and Ruth showed Shareth pictures they drew of their parents. Other survivors shared memories of friends lost, of normal days that would never come again. Shareth listened to all of it. After 4 million years of observing without connecting, she discovered something her people had missed. Grief shared was different than grief observed. Connection changed the nature of loss, made it bearable in ways that pure documentation never could. Amy taught Shareth a human children's song about stars. The dragon's voice was not designed for human music, but she tried. The sound was strange, deep notes that rumbled through the cargo bay like distant thunder. But Amy clapped anyway, delighted. One night, when most of the survivors had gone to sleep, Patricia returned. She looked worried. What is wrong? Shareth asked. I received a message from Terra Nova, from the Colonial Administration. They know about you, about Amy. There will be a hearing when we arrive. A hearing to determine Amy's placement, who will care for her, where she will live. Patricia took a deep breath. And to determine what to do about you. Shareth felt something cold settle in her chest. She looked down at Amy, sleeping peacefully against her scales. They will separate us. I do not know. Human law was not written with situations like this in mind. But I promise you this. I will fight for you both. I will testify about what I have seen, about what you mean to these survivors. Thank you, Patricia Lewis. Call me Patricia. Anyone who tells stories to traumatize children has earned first-name status. The ship moved through space toward Terra Nova, carrying its cargo of refugees and one ancient dragon who had discovered that some rules, no matter how old, were worth breaking for the right reasons. In 3 weeks, they would all face judgment from a civilization that had never had to decide whether love could exist between species separated by millions of years of evolution. But for now, In the quiet darkness of the cargo bay, surrounded by sleeping humans who had lost everything and found an impossible friendship, Shareth allowed herself to hope. Terra Nova gleamed below them like a jewel, its cities bright against blue oceans and green continents. Shareth had seen thousands of inhabited worlds, but this one felt different because Amy pressed her face against the cargo bay's small viewing port and whispered, "Pretty." The ship docked at a massive orbital station. Officials came aboard immediately, their faces serious and their questions endless. Patricia dealt with most of them while Dr. Okonkwo kept the survivors together in the cargo bay. The humans seemed nervous about what would happen next. Amy stayed close to Shareth, holding onto the dragon's claw. She had been quiet all morning, sensing the tension in the adults around her. A woman in formal clothing entered the cargo bay, flanked by 2 security officers. She was middle-aged with gray in her hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I am Governor Winters. I oversee colonial administration for this sector." She looked at Shareth without visible fear, which was either very brave or very foolish. "You are the DRA Val who rescued the human child. I am Shareth, and you understand that your presence here creates significant complications. I understand that I frighten your people, but I mean no harm." That may be true. However, harm and fear are not always the same thing. Governor Winters knelt beside Amy. "Hello, sweetheart. I am Governor Winters. Can you tell me your full name?" "Amy Catherine Morrison." "That is a very pretty name." "Amy, we need to figure out where you will live now. Who will take care of you? Do you have any family? Aunts or uncles? Grandparents?" Amy shook her head. "Just Mama and Papa. They are gone now. I am very sorry." The governor's voice softened. "What about Shareth? Can you tell me about her? She saved me. When the sky burned, she found me and gave me water and kept me warm. She tells good stories. She is mine, yours, and I am hers." Amy said it with complete certainty. "We belong together." Governor Winters looked at Shareth with complicated eyes. She stood and gestured for Patricia to join her outside the cargo bay. Through the open door, Shareth could hear their conversation. "Commander Lewis, your report claims this alien has been caring for the child for 3 weeks. That is correct, Governor. And you believe this is appropriate? I believe that child has been through massive trauma, and the only constant in her life right now is that dragon. Separating them would cause significant psychological harm. We have trained counselors, foster families ready to take in orphaned children. With respect, Governor, none of those counselors or families were there when Amy needed someone most. Shareth was. That matters." Another voice joined the conversation. A new person had arrived, a woman with kind eyes and professional clothing. "Governor, if I may, Dr. Rodriguez, your timing is fortunate. What is your professional assessment?" The woman Shareth could now see was younger than the governor, with dark hair pulled back severely. "I have been reviewing Commander Lewis's reports and the psychological evaluations of all the Virtus survivors. The children who have had contact with the DRA Val are showing significantly better recovery than we would expect. The adult survivors report feeling calmer when in her presence. This is highly unusual, but also highly beneficial. That does not address the legal complications of an alien caring for a human child. No, it does not, which is why I am here to make a proposal." Dr. Rodriguez moved into the cargo bay, approaching Shareth directly. "I'm Dr. Amelia Rodriguez. I specialize in xenopsychology and family dynamics. May I speak with you frankly? Please." Human law recognizes guardianship based on the best interests of a child. Traditionally, this means placing children with human caregivers. However, the law also recognizes that exceptional circumstances require exceptional solutions. She pulled out a data pad, showing Shareth various documents. "I have been working with legal experts across 3 colonies. We believe we can establish a legal framework for cross-species guardianship." Shareth felt something stir in her chest. "You are suggesting I become Amy's legal guardian, in partnership with a human co-guardian who can navigate aspects of human society that would be challenging for you. Someone like Commander Lewis, who has already demonstrated commitment to Amy's well-being." Patricia, who had followed them into the cargo bay, looked shocked. You want me to adopt Amy? With a dragon? With a DRA Val who has proven herself trustworthy and devoted? Yes. Dr. Rodriguez turned to include everyone in the conversation. This is unprecedented. It will require new laws, new frameworks, and probably significant political debate. But I believe it is the right thing to do for this child. Governor Winters looked deeply uncomfortable. Dr. Rodriguez, the precedent this sets is enormous. If we allow this, we are saying that aliens can have parental rights over human children. No, we are saying that individuals who save lives and provide care earn the right to continue that care, regardless of species. That seems like a precedent worth setting. The Colonial Council will have strong opinions. Let them. Sometimes doing the right thing requires being brave enough to withstand criticism. Amy had been listening to all of this with growing anxiety. Now she spoke up, her voice small but determined. I want to stay with Shareth. Please do not make me go away from her. The governor closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with visible resignation. There will be a formal hearing. 3 days from now, both Commander Lewis and Shareth will need to testify. The council will make the final decision. She looked at Patricia. Are you willing to take on co-guardianship if it is approved? Patricia looked at Amy, then at Shareth. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species. Yes, I am willing. The governor nodded stiffly. Then we have 3 days to prepare. Dr. Rodriguez, work with legal to draft the necessary frameworks. Commander Lewis, you will need to file formal adoption paperwork. Shareth, she paused, seeming uncertain how to address a dragon. You will need to demonstrate that you understand human child development and can meet Amy's needs. I will do whatever is required, Shareth said quietly. The officials left, still talking among themselves about the massive legal challenges ahead. Patricia sat on a storage crate, looking dazed. I just agreed to adopt a child with a dragon. My mother's going to have questions. Dr. Okonkwo, who had been quiet throughout, laughed. I believe your mother will understand once she meets Amy and Shareth. Amy climbed up onto Patricia's lap, something she had started doing over the past week. You will be my mama now? You and Shareth together. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. If the council approves it, yes. Good. Amy seemed satisfied with this arrangement. I liked having one mama before. Now I will have two. That is better. That night, as Amy slept between Patricia and Shareth in the cargo bay that had become their temporary home, the dragon received a message on the communications device the humans had provided. It was from Calvar. Shareth, I hope this message finds you well. The council has declared your exile official. You are non-existent to our people now. But you should know something. Tyrion and 3 others of our younger generation have also been exiled. They questioned the council's decision. They argued that saving a life cannot be wrong. The council rejected their arguments, but the fact that they argued at all is significant. You have started something, old friend. Perhaps change comes slowly even to beings as old as us. I wish you well, wherever you are. Shareth deleted the message, but kept the hope it contained. Change was possible, even for species millions of years old, even for individuals thousands of years into their lives. Amy stirred in her sleep, reaching out until her hand touched Shareth's scales. Reassured, she settled again. Patricia watched this with soft eyes. 3 days, Patricia said quietly. 3 days until we find out if love counts more than law. In my experience, Shareth replied, the best laws are the ones written to protect love. Then let us hope the Colonial Council agrees with you. Outside the cargo bay, Terra Nova turned slowly beneath them, its billions of humans unaware that their legal system was about to be challenged by one little girl's refusal to see species as a barrier to family. In 3 days, Amy would stand before judges and politicians and tell them something simple and profound. That family was not about biology, but about who stayed when everything else burned away. And somewhere in the depths of space, for exiled dragons flew together toward an uncertain future, wondering if the rules that had governed their people for millions of years were finally ready to change. 6 months had passed since the hearing. 6 months since a panel of 7 judges listened to testimony about a dragon and a human child and made a decision that changed everything. The house they lived in now was built into a hillside, half cave and half structure, designed to accommodate both human and DRA-Val needs. Amy's room was cozy and filled with drawings. Shareth's space was open to the sky, with smooth stone warmed by sunlight. Patricia came home from her new posting at Colonial Administration headquarters to find Amy doing homework in the garden while Shareth helped by holding the data pad at the right angle. It was a scene that had become wonderfully normal. "How was work?" Amy asked, looking up with a smile. "Long meetings about supply chains." "How was school?" "We learned about Earth, about the old animals that lived there before humans went to space. Did you know they had creatures called elephants? They were big like Shareth, but with trunks instead of wings." "I didn't know that." Patricia sat beside them, accepting the warm drink Shareth had learned to prepare using controlled fire breath in a metal kettle. "We got news today about Virtus." Shareth's attention sharpened. "What kind of news?" "The planet is recovering faster than anyone predicted. New growth everywhere. Water systems stabilizing. The science teams think it might be habitable again within a year." Patricia looked at them both carefully. "They are planning an expedition to recover data, study the recovery process, and begin planning for possible resettlement. They asked if we wanted to go." Amy's face showed complicated emotions. She was 7 now, taller and more confident than the terrified child Shareth had found in the ruins. But Virtus was where she had lost everything. "Will it still be scary there?" "Probably a little," Patricia admitted. "But you would not be alone. We would all go together. And maybe seeing it coming back to life would help." "Will my house be there?" "Some structures survived. We could visit your old home if you wanted." Amy thought about this seriously, then looked up at Shareth. "What do you think?" The dragon considered carefully. "I think returning to places of grief can be healing. Seeing that life persists even after terrible loss can teach us important lessons." "Okay, then I want to go." 3 weeks later, they stood on Virtus again. The transformation was remarkable. Where ash had covered everything, green now grew. Strange plants had emerged, species that thrived in the mineral-rich soil left by the disaster. Water flowed in rivers that had been dry. The air smelled of growth instead of death. Other survivors had come too. David was there, now 14 and studying xenobiology. Claire and Ruth came with their new adoptive parents, excited to see Shareth again. All 17 survivors of the original 50,000 had been invited to this expedition. They walked together through the recovery zones, marveling at how quickly life had returned. Scientists took samples and measurements, documenting everything. But for the survivors, it was something more personal. It was proof that endings could become beginnings. Amy led them to where her family's home had stood. The structure was gone, melted in the flare, but the foundation remained. She knelt and touched the stone where her kitchen had been. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling too. "Mama loved to cook," Amy said softly. "She made the best noodles. Papa always said she could make anything taste good." She looked at the empty space. "They are really gone, are not they? Even with everything growing back, they cannot come back." Patricia knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart, they cannot come back. But I can remember them. I can tell people about them. About how Mama sang while she cooked, and how Papa told funny jokes that were not actually funny, but we laughed anyway." Amy stood up, wiping her eyes. "Shareth says that as long as we remember, people are not completely gone." "Your dragon is very wise," Patricia said gently. "She's not just my dragon. She is our dragon, yours and mine together." The expedition team had brought materials for a memorial. Working together, humans and the 4 exiled DRA-Val who had joined them began to build. It was simple but beautiful, a stone circle with 50,000 names carved into metal plates. Each person who died on Virtus would be remembered here. When it was complete, Amy asked Shareth for something specific. "Will you light it? The way you did in the cave, when you kept me warm? But like a ceremony?" Shareth understood. She moved to the center of the memorial and breathed fire, controlled and precise, into a prepared basin. The flames caught and held, burning with steady warmth. It would be maintained, the expedition leader promised, as an eternal flame remembering those lost. Amy stepped forward and spoke, her young voice clear in the growing dusk. 50,000 people died here. They were our families, our friends, our neighbors. They were teachers and doctors and pilots and farmers. They were parents and children and partners. The fire destroyed them, but another kind of fire saved me. The warmth of someone who did not have to care, but chose to anyway. She turned to look at Shareth, then at the other dragons, then at all the humans gathered. Mama and Papa taught me that family is people who love you. Shareth taught me that family can be anyone who chooses to stay when things are hard. Patricia taught me that family can grow bigger to include new people. All of you taught me that we can survive terrible things if we are not alone. David stepped forward and added his own words. The fire took everything from us, but we are still here, and we are building something new. Claire and Ruth came next, speaking together as they often did. We were so scared, but Shareth told us stories. She showed us that endings are not the same as erasure. We remember. One by one, the survivors spoke. They shared memories of those lost. They talked about their grief and their healing. They acknowledged the impossibility of a dragon saving a human child and how that impossibility became the foundation for something unprecedented. A S-night fell over Virtus. The eternal flame burned steadily. Around it, humans and dragons sat together. The children leaned against Shareth's massive form, while adults talked quietly about the future. Plans were made for resettlement, for rebuilding, for making this wounded world whole again. Tyrion, one of the other exiled dragons, spoke to Shareth in their ancient language. The council sent another message. More of our young are questioning the old ways. Some elders, too. They have not rescinded our exile, but the consensus is weakening. Good, Shareth replied. Change should come to all species eventually, even ones as old as ours. Do you regret it? Choosing the child over our people. Shareth looked at Amy, who was explaining constellations to Ruth using a star chart. Patricia sat nearby, laughing at something David said. The other survivors smiled and talked, finding peace in this place that had once only held death. I regret nothing, Shareth said. I have learned more about life in 6 months with humans than in 3,000 years of observation. Connection matters more than documentation. Love matters more than law. And sometimes the most important thing an ancient being can do is learn from someone very young. Amy noticed Shareth watching and waved enthusiastically. The dragon waved back, a gesture that would have seemed absurd to any Diaraval 6 months ago, but now felt perfectly natural. Later, as they prepared to return to the ship, Amy took Shareth's claw in one hand and Patricia's hand in the other. We are a family, right? A real family. The realist, Patricia confirmed. Even though we are different species, and it is weird, and no one has ever done it before. Especially because of that, Shareth said. The best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we were born into. Amy seemed satisfied with this answer. As they walked back toward the landing site, she began to sing. It was a human children's song about stars and hope and new beginnings. Patricia joined in, her voice harmonizing. Shareth added her own rumbling notes, creating something that was not quite human music and not quite Diaraval song, but something entirely new. Behind them, the eternal flame burned in the memorial circle. Around them, new life grew from ash and destruction. Above them, stars shone the same way they had for billions of years, indifferent to species and laws and all the small struggles of living beings. But beneath those stars, something unprecedented had happened. An ancient dragon had wrapped her wing around a human child when fire destroyed everything. And from that simple act of choosing compassion over protocol, both species discovered what it meant to truly live rather than simply exist. The fire had destroyed everything, but it had also burned away old rules and ancient barriers, leaving space for something neither species had imagined. A family built on choice, strengthened by difference, and held together by the warmest kind of fire that had nothing to do with flame and everything to do with love. Amy looked back one more time at the memorial, at the eternal flame burning steadily in the darkness. She waved goodbye to the memories held there, then turned forward to face the future with her 2 mothers, one human and one dragon, walking beside her toward whatever came next. And on Virtus, Life continued its patient work of rebuilding, proving what Amy already knew, that even after the worst fires, new growth was always possible for those brave enough to begin again.